Picture this. It's a scorching summer afternoon in the American South. The air is thick with heat and tension. A young black boy watches from the sidewalk as white children splash and laugh in a glistening public pool. A whites-only sign hangs behind them, bold and unapologetic. The boy turns away. Not because he doesn't want to swim, but because he's not allowed to.
Get out of the pool, boy!
And that right there is where this story begins. The truth about why so many Black Americans don't swim has nothing to do with culture, and everything to do with generational trauma, systemic exclusion, and a long, ugly history America rarely wants to talk about. Because this isn't about preference, it's about policy, about fear, and about grief. People joke about it. They say, oh, Black folks just don't swim, like it's some harmless personality trait. But here's the truth. Fewer than 40% of Black adults in the U.S. know how to swim. And when you look at the children, it gets worse. Over 60% of Black kids can't swim. You know what that leads to? Drowning rates that are 3 to 5 times higher than for white children. This isn't just tragic, it's predictable. And it's rooted in the way America built its cities, its neighborhoods, its pools, and its rules. Back in the early 20th century, when cities across the U.S. were building big, beautiful public swimming pools, they weren't building them for everybody. Black families were either banned outright or kept out through violence. In Pittsburgh, 1951, a Black man was beaten and arrested just for trying to swim in a public pool. And in that same era, another story, quiet but just as devastating, unfolded in Youngstown, Ohio in 1954. A Little League baseball team had just won the city championship. They were kids, Black and white, excited to celebrate together at a large public pool nestled in a park on the south side. But one of the players, a boy named Al Bright, was stopped at the gate. He was the only Black child on the team, and the unwritten rule was enforced immediately.
Y'all are not allowed in the pool.
So while the other children jumped into the water, laughed, and played, Al sat alone outside the fence on the lawn, excluded, punished, simply for existing. After over an hour, some of the white parents, moved by guilt or shame, begged the guards to let Al join, just for a moment. The pool supervisor finally agreed, but with a disturbing condition: every other child had to get out of the pool. And Al? He wasn't allowed to swim. He could be placed in the pool, but not in the water. They made him sit in a rubber raft. A lifeguard slowly pushed the boat once around the edge, warning him the entire time.
Do not touch the water. Whatever you do, don't touch it.
Imagine the humiliation. A child surrounded by his teammates watched like a threat, treated like contamination, floating in the very thing that brought others joy, yet forbidden from making contact with it. That's the kind of memory that buries itself into families, into neighborhoods, into generations. And it didn't stop there. In many Black neighborhoods, swimming pools were never built in the first place. Public funding was sparse or non-existent. Even today, many low-income Black neighborhoods have no accessible pool within walking distance, let alone affordable swim lessons. When parents can't swim, they often pass that fear, sometimes trauma, onto their children. The cycle repeats, fear grows, and with it, the number of preventable drownings. There's also a grotesque layer of myth and pseudoscience that once tried to justify this disparity. In the early 20th century, some white researchers spread the false belief that Black people had denser bones and were less buoyant, making them naturally poor swimmers. This lie reinforced stereotypes and gave scientific cover to racist exclusion. That myth still lingers in the minds of many today, despite having been completely debunked. Even in pop culture, Black swimmers were historically erased. Think about the Olympics, lifeguard films, or beach scenes in Hollywood. Almost no Black faces. Until very recently, there were no major Black figures in competitive swimming. When Cullen Jones won gold as part of the 2008 U.S. Olympic swim team, it shocked many Americans, not because of his talent, but because many didn't think Black people did that. But let's be clear, the problem was never ability, It was access and trauma. Long before segregation signs were nailed to fences, the water was already a site of black suffering. The transatlantic slave trade, which kidnapped over 12 million Africans and trafficked them across oceans in horrifying conditions, introduced a legacy of aquatic trauma that still echoes today. During the Middle Passage, enslaved Africans were shackled below deck in dark, airless hulls. Many died from disease, starvation, or suffocation. Others were thrown overboard, dead or alive, when captains needed to reduce cargo or claim insurance money. Some jumped voluntarily, choosing death over bondage, their last moments swallowed by the sea. Upon arrival in the Americas, enslaved people were often subjected to what was known as the last bath. This wasn't a cleansing. It was a ritual of humiliation and violence. White enslavers and traders would boil water or use caustic chemicals to scrub the skin of black men, women, and children. Some poured lye or turpentine into wounds to rid the body of African odor. Others shaved heads, stripped bodies, and tied victims to posts to be hosed and scrubbed like livestock. This was how black people were introduced to water in America, not as a place of leisure or freedom, but as a site of trauma, control, and dehumanization. And yet, before all of this, Africans had long embraced the water. Across West Africa and the Caribbean, aquatic life was woven into daily survival. Africans dove for oysters, navigated rivers, and trained children to swim in oceans. Coastal cultures along Nigeria, Ghana, and Angola were strong swimmers long before they were chained in the hulls of ships. Caribbean islanders, many of whom were descendants of enslaved Africans, continued this tradition in places like Jamaica, St. Lucia, and Trinidad. Swimming was never foreign to black people, but in America it was forcibly erased. The decades that followed offered no relief. In the Jim Crow era, white communities were often more willing to destroy public infrastructure than share it with black citizens. One of the most disturbing examples of this was the mass draining of swimming pools after black people entered them. In cities like Montgomery, Louisville, and even Los Angeles, white pool owners or city officials drained entire public pools as soon as a single black person swam in the water. They didn't just ask them to leave. They literally pulled the plugs and emptied the water, sometimes publicly, to send a message. Your black body does not belong here. They claimed contamination. They claimed it was about hygiene, but it wasn't. It was about hate. In 1956, after a group of black swimmers entered the Fairground Park pool in St. Louis, officials closed it and drained the water. When the city reopened it a week later, thousands of white swimmers came. But black swimmers were kept out again. And it wasn't just draining. In 1964, the fight for civil rights made its way to St. Augustine, Florida, a city boiling with racial tension. On June 18th, a group of black and white civil rights protesters came together to challenge the segregation of the Monson Motor Lodge swimming pool. Martin Luther King Jr. would be present as well. They jumped into the water in an act of peaceful resistance, knowing full well what might come next. And what came was terrifying. James Brock, the white motel manager, grabbed a bottle of muriatic acid, a harsh chemical used to clean pool surfaces, and began pouring it directly into the water where the protesters swam. He didn't just want them out, he wanted them to suffer. The swimmers screamed as the acid hit the pool, skin burned, eyes stung. And all of it happened under the Florida sun, in front of cameras as the world watched. A black protester was yanked out of the water and beaten. Police handcuffed others by the pool's edge. That moment, caught in photos and broadcast on national television, should have been a turning point. Here is the actual news clip from that disturbing day. For many white Americans, it wasn't a horror story. It was just another incident, another justification to keep black people out of shared public spaces, another reason to drain the pool, literally and figuratively. Now here we are in the present day. And the numbers are terrifying. According to the CDC, black children ages 5 to 14 drown in swimming pools at a rate more than 5 times higher than their white counterparts. In inner city areas, that number is even higher. In some cities like Memphis or Baltimore, up to 70% of black youth report having no formal swim instruction. Why? Because swimming still isn't accessible. The cost of swim lessons, the distance to safe pools, and the cultural stigma still hang heavy. In 2020 alone, over 900 children under 14 drowned in the United States. Too many of them were black. And the worst part? Those deaths were preventable. But here's the good news. People are fighting back. Organizations like Black Kids Swim, Swim 1922, and Diversity in Aquatics are breaking down the stigma, offering free and low-cost lessons, and helping kids and adults finally learn to swim. Athletes like Cullen Jones and Simone Manuel are proving that black excellence exists in the pool just like anywhere else. Even companies are starting to make swim caps designed for Afro-textured hair, something so small but so important for building comfort and confidence. So the next time someone makes a joke about black people not swimming, remember, it's not funny. It's not a punchline. It's a wound, centuries old, chlorine-soaked, and far from healed. This goes to show how black folks, despite the painful past, resilient we remain. Scope News tells the truth. Here are the facts. Special thanks to the CDC's Drowning Disparity Reports, the USA Swimming Foundation, the NDACP, NPR's The Racial History of American Swimming Pools, Swim 1922, the YMCA's Water Safety Initiative, Northwestern University's 2022 study on intergenerational swimmability, and archived coverage of the 1964 St. Augustine protest at Monson Motor Lodge. Additional insights were drawn from Equal Justice Initiative case studies, the Youngstown Vindicators reporting on Al Bright, 1954, and cultural records from the Transatlantic Slave Trade Archives on African aquatic traditions and the Last Bath Ritual. Legal disclaimer: this report is based on factual historical sources and contemporary research. It is intended for educational, informational, historical, or entertainment purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised. Scope News strives to reflect history as accurately and responsibly as possible. However, due to the limitations of image licensing, archival access, and evolving research, some imagery or historical visuals may not be available, and certain representations may be dramatized for clarity. While every effort has been made to ensure accuracy, mistakes or omissions may occur. This content is not intended to defame, harm, or misrepresent any individual or group, but to shed light on historical truths that have been overlooked, ignored, or erased.